Okay, let's move on and briefly talk about video interceptions. Like many laws, different courts have different interpretation of the laws regarding eavesdropping and how they apply to video. I guess the easiest example to use here is that of the so-called nanny cams, which are openly and evidently legally sold in the U.S. Personally, I believe that to video someone, such as a nanny, without her permission is a violation of her constitutional right of privacy. I guess I need to point out here that I'm not talking about whether it's legal or illegal to video someone on a public street. I'm talking about videoing someone who has every reason to believe that no one can see them because they're in the privacy of a home. I want you to know that I firmly believe that if you're going to use a nanny cam or other video surveillance device to monitor your nanny, maid, etc., then you should definitely have them sign a release giving you permission to do so. This chapter wouldn't be complete without briefly discussing the subject of intercepting someone's internet communications or even keystrokes typed on a computer. As you know, spyware programs and devices that record every keystroke typed are widely sold, and it seems like the courts, or at least most of them, have decided that the current laws do not apply here. Personally, I don't understand it because, in my opinion, it's still a violation of someone's constitutional right of privacy. I'd like to address two other issues here, and that is the eavesdropping on your children and recording your own telephone conversations. First of all, several higher courts have ruled that it is illegal to record your children's phone conversations without their knowledge, so I simply suggest you don't do it. By the way, this applies to secretly recording your spouse's conversations also, so don't do that either. Secondly, the laws regarding whether or not it's legal to record your own telephone conversations seems to be pretty much regulated on a state-by-state basis. Basically, the issue here is referred to as a one-party consent issue or all-party consent. One-party consent refers to where only one party of the telephone conversation needs to have knowledge that the call is being recorded, whereas all-party consent refers to the fact that all people on the phone call need to have knowledge that the call is being recorded. To my knowledge, there's only 12 states that require all-party consent, and they are California, Connecticut, Delaware, Florida, Illinois, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Montana, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, and Washington. If you're planning on recording your telephone conversations in the future, then I personally suggest you contact your legal counsel regarding the laws in your state. By the way, I'm not even going to try to talk about the recording of conversations across state lines, where one state has a one-party consent law and the other an all-party consent law. If you remember all the legal issues that arose due to the recordings that Linda Tripp made of Monica Lewinsky across state lines, then you will understand. Okay, now it's time to move on to the second area we need to talk about, and that's the subject of the legal issues that need to be considered when you hire a TSEM service provider. I know that most of you don't want to hear this, but when a TSEM service provider finds an illegal eavesdropping device, the service provider and the client both have the legal responsibility to report it to their appropriate law enforcement agency. I know this doesn't always happen, and I completely understand why, but you should know that the law is pretty specific on this issue, and failure to report it can have some pretty tough criminal consequences since all parties involved are technically a witness to a felony. I guess I don't need to say any more on this subject, but my attorney insisted that I at least mention it. Now, if you're a company hiring a TSCM service provider, you should ask the provider if he has a standard contract. This contract at a minimum should include the agreed upon contract price, plus a mutual non-disclosure clause. The non-disclosure issue is really an important one here since you'll be sharing some highly confidential information with the TSCM service provider. So just be smart and make sure that there's at least some type of non-disclosure agreement in place. All right, that wraps it up for my overview of the legal issues. I want to again remind you that I am not an attorney, and my interpretations of the relevant laws are simply personal. But I hope it's been really helpful to some of you. I'll give you a short wrap-up of the video in the next chapter, so I'll see you there.